buying airplane tickets takes me a week, a full time, like comparing tickets and layovers. And okay, maybe then we can stay at this hotel, but they cost this much, but then we get the experience. And yeah, it's, I guess, the analytical OCD kind of side that comes with data analysis.
Today, I had the pleasure of interviewing Stefan Masnikovic. Stefan held a stable job as a data analyst for 7 full years. Right as he hit his career peak, when he was working as a freelancer earning a 6-figure income, he decided to 180 his life completely, leave everything behind, and start focusing on building a personal brand on YouTube while traveling the world. In this episode, we talk about why the traditional job path may not be for everyone, what Stefan learned from his travels, and how everyone can benefit from a little career risk in the right places. I really enjoyed this conversation with Stefan. I hope you enjoyed as well. Stefan, thank you so much for coming on the Kensington's Neighbors podcast. I'm a huge fan of your content. I've sort of gotten enthralled by your lifestyle, working remotely, and sort of living what a lot of people would consider like a sort of like a freedom dream in some sense. And I'm really excited to hear about your process for creating your lifestyle, as well as how data analytics and maybe your previous life before that fit all into that. So again, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, man. Excited to be here.
Amazing. Well, so the first thing I really want to get started off with is, you worked as a data analyst for a while. How did you first get interested in data? Was there something like a pivotal moment that happened, or was it more of a slow progression over time?
It was definitely more a slow progression over time because I didn't study anything data analysis related. It was more engineering. I always had a thing for technical stuff, but nothing data analysis related. And then my first job, which I did for a very short time, was basically being a tech recruiter. I quickly realized that's nothing for me. And then I quickly hopped onto this IT management traineeship, which is also not necessarily data related, but one of my first projects there was kind of a business analyst role, analyzing the requirements for a new software tool that they were going to implement. And the software tool was something related to dashboards, reporting, reading out data. And that's how I slowly got in touch with data, slowly started picking up responsibilities, making reports, improving existing dashboards. And that's how it kind of, I guess you could call it like a business analyst, performance analyst role. And the better I got with Excel, the more questions, the more report and dashboard related questions came to me at the office. And eventually I heard about this thing called Power BI, a business intelligence tool, started learning that, started using that during work to improve the dashboards. And I guess somewhere along those lines, in the first 2 years of the traineeship, it was not really a pivotal moment, but I guess it went from just doing some random stuff with data to, I'm a data analyst. I build dashboards, I analyze data, I make reports, eventually improving, learning Python as well, doing more advanced analytics, some machine learning here and there. So a slow, gradual pivot into data analysis.
Fascinating. Well, I think, at least for me, what's even more interesting is what comes after that. So obviously, a lot of my content historically has been about getting into the field, learning data science. A lot of my friends are focused on learning the data analysis domain. And I think that I would hope we'd both agree that it's a good domain, right? It's an interesting
Definitely.
field, but it isn't for everyone. And I think that over time, you've realized that maybe a traditional data analyst career, and correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but a traditional data analyst career maybe isn't exactly what you wanted or how you saw your life. And I'm interested in maybe, when you determined or how you determined that more traditional data analyst career wasn't for you.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. It's like the traditional data analyst career. It's not necessarily that I don't like data analysis. I love it. That's why I did it for such a long time. That's why I got better at it, because I don't know, I have this creative itch inside me, and data analysis is actually a pretty good way to scratch that creative itch, because you're creating dashboards, you're creating reports. And I guess I also have this analytical thing inside me just to figure out everything. I'm really curious about stuff. So I definitely love the data analysis field, and I hope I can do it for the rest of my life, use it in whatever way possible. It's just that the corporate office kind of environment where I utilized my data analysis skills, I realized that's not for me. Like when I questioned, okay, this career path I'm facing right now, what's the end goal? And I always thought like, okay, I'm going to become some kind of senior manager. If you're really lucky, you can become some kind of CEO or board director or whatever, but at least some kind of high level manager. And then I realized, so, okay, so basically the thing I like, data analysis, I would probably do less and less and less of it. And then I'm going to become this manager. And about like 4 or 5 years in my career, I started working at Heineken, and I got to see what it's like working as a senior manager. I saw basically they were, well, not, I wouldn't say stressed, but they were really busy. They would work very long days. They would be almost only in meetings, and the actual work, so making presentations, preparing presentations, writing some emails, replying to emails, they would do at home. I would always get replies from my manager at like 10, 11 in the evening. So I knew like they basically sit the whole day in meetings. They do some work in the evenings when they should have spent some time with friends, family, children, hobbies, health, whatever. And then I realized like, man, if that's the end goal, that I don't want to go that direction. And I couldn't see anything else in the data analysis field, at least in an office environment, that I could do, until I thought about the fact that, hey, maybe I can make this kind of sidestep to entrepreneurship as a freelancer. So I still keep doing data analysis, but it's kind of a step outside of the office environment because you're a freelancer. You get hired for very specific tasks. You're not involved with the HR, corporate office bullshit, no end of year reviews, no I had basically all the BS that comes with it. It's just we pay you to do a very specific job, and and that was like a perfect stepping stone to, I guess, entrepreneurship. Um, so I kind of lost my train of thoughts of what was the original question. Why
No,
I
well, you answered it, perfectly in my opinion. Your story to me, it highlights some of the things that I see and that I also think a lot of data scientists or data analysts don't think about, right? So, you're looking into the future. What is the upside of this position? And you can become, for example, a data analyst. Maybe you'd want to become a senior data analyst. You want to become a manager. That's great. Data scientist, maybe
Mhm.
senior data scientist, tech lead, something along those lines. But beyond that, you're still working for someone else. And depending on the
Mhm.
route that you take, you might not be doing really any actual analytical work anymore. I took a segue from my like hands-on role, and I went into like project management and then product ownership, where I was leading a team, and I didn't get to do any of the work that I actually used to enjoy. I was managing
Yeah,
people, which is very different than managing projects. And I think that if we're thinking about like what is the end goal, for a lot of people who are data analysts, they might want to be individual contributors for the foreseeable future because they enjoy the work that they do. But there's essentially like a pay cap. There's like a limited upside on being an individual contributor. I mean, like a really high level data scientist at a company can be making, a lot of money a year, maybe even like somewhere $1 million a year, something like that. Um,
definitely.
but you're sort of siloed a little bit once you get to that level. Um, and I think that trying to figure out how to step outside of that, if you really do enjoy the work, is a really important thing to do. Um,
Yeah,
the profession itself has also not been around that long, and we don't really know what the exit opportunities look like. We really don't know um, what the next tier of hiring or the next level of engineer or whatever it might be. So I can 100% empathize with what you're feeling. I mean, it's something that I was also feeling. I mean, I went into a management role. I realized that, to be perfectly honest, I'm not good at managing people. Like, I'm good
yeah,
at managing myself. I think I'm really good at leadership, which is defining strategy and encouraging people to go in the right direction. But individually telling people and managing their work and looking over their shoulder is something I'm god awful at, right? And
it's a
so,
completely different world. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, so I think what you're describing, I can completely relate with. But also, it doesn't, that definitely doesn't mean, I don't think either of us think that someone that wants to be an individual contributor is a bad thing, right? That is a very like structured, it's straightforward, it's an excellent career, but I've never been interested personally in an interesting career. I mean, like a good career. I'm interested in an interesting and exciting career.
Yeah,
Um, and some data science roles might offer that more than others, but it's kind of hard to do that in this domain, I think, unless you're one working at a really like innovative company, or two, you're switching jobs slightly more than the average person.
agree, fully agree. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
to just emphasize, like, uh, I kind of also left the job because I could have decided, you know what, I'm gonna, because I made the step to freelancing, but then eventually I became a YouTuber. We'll talk about that a bit later. But I could have also decided, you know what, I'm going to stay as a freelancer for the rest of my life. But I have other opinions about working a 9 to 5 that we can touch upon if you want later. Why I still eventually made the decision to do something completely different. Um,
Yeah. Well, I mean, we might as well dive into those. I mean, I think a common one for me is that, trading time for money is
yeah,
is a major frustration, right? Uh, you know, we both are YouTube creators. We put a video out there and it gets watched when we sleep. It gets, consumed. We get paid for all the work that we did up front.
yeah,
And I think that that's a really powerful concept. I mean, that was something that completely changed how I viewed life from when I was maybe entering the workforce to now. Um, you know, I would imagine that's a strong one. Are there, along with that, are there any other major factors that kind of shook you up?
yeah. To build upon that one, it's. I guess it's a personal thing. I like having a lot of options. Like, I don't know what I'm going to think about, what my goals are going to look like in 10 years from now. And I want to stay flexible that I can change and pivot and into whatever I want. But as a data analyst, like, yeah, you could learn a new skill or a new tool, but it's pretty rigid. It's like, yeah, you do data analysis and you can change the companies and the projects, but that's about it. But like when I started YouTube, I think the more things, the more my channel grows, the more opportunities come my way. Like basically us doing this podcast. You started your podcast. That's one thing. You can, I don't know, build a course, write a book, start coaching, make your own product of whatever. Maybe even go back to data analysis. Maybe build some kind of dashboard for YouTubers or whatever. There's so many possibilities, and I love that. I love having that, like, just going with the flow and picking out exactly what I want to do. And yeah, so that was one thing, just that open, having a lot of opportunities. And also the fact, which is kind of related, the fact is, no matter how good of a data analyst you are, good of a data scientist you are, if your manager sucks, if he doesn't like you, or maybe his manager doesn't like your manager, whatever, uh, you could have a very bad day at work, or a very bad period at work, and you have no control over that. No matter how good your work is, if your manager doesn't like you, he's going to give you a hard time. So that's one thing, that's like the personal connections you have, you don't really have control over. The economy might crash, meaning your company has to cut budgets, meaning they have to lay you off, or maybe your team gets cut in half, so you have to do a lot more work and more stress coming your way. And I think the point I'm trying to make is you don't have a lot of control over some external factors working a 9 to 5. No matter how hard you work, there's just some stuff you don't have a control over. And as an entrepreneur, you do have more flexibility and control, like time, money, income, how much you want to work, stuff like that. Of course, it comes with the risks. If you don't want to work, there's no income. But if you're willing to accept those, the rewards are way higher than working at a 9 to 5. So that definitely also played a big role for me. And I guess the things that we touched upon in the beginning, just the corporate office bullshit and the environment, and like you have to put on a shirt when you come to work, and there's some stuff you can talk about and can't talk about, and office lingo. And I'm not like that, man. I want to be myself all the time. I don't want to pretend I'm something else when I'm at the office. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense for me. So yeah, a combination of things.
I really like that. I mean, to me, you touched on risk, right? And I think that that's a really important way to view
Yeah,
it is, for some people, the risk of entrepreneurship is not worth it. It's scary to them. Like you know exactly what you're getting or closer to what you're getting with a more traditional 9 to 5 job. On the other side of that, I think most entrepreneurs view risk in a very different way. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a successful entrepreneur, but I have some businesses. I do a lot of work for myself. And the way I view risk is that if I am not doing these things, someone else will. And I'm
Yeah.
risking the opportunity cost of my time in one place or the other. I also view it as is that we have this maybe this system that we've created that we can build over time. And the risk of me not putting in the work early means that I'm giving up this future success that I could be building for myself to have most of the things that I want. And so, it's not just about what you're necessarily giving up in the short term; it's what you're giving up in the long term. To me,
Yeah.
um, I also look at risk of, like, let's say getting fired from a company. To me, that's something that would be very scary. You're cut off, you get some severance, whatever it might be, but you're cut off relatively immediately and you have to start over. I don't think
Yeah.
of any of the businesses that I have now. If the economy went bad, yes, I would probably make significantly more money, but all of the businesses that I have would still operate and cash flow. Yes,
Yeah.
I'd have to make a tremendous amount of sacrifices, but I'm not completely at ground zero where I would be if I was working and I kind of peeled something off. So I think that that there might be a lesson in there where it's like, hey, people who are working traditional jobs also create other entrepreneurial ventures if you have that
Yeah.
bug in you. But I would also say that data analysts and data scientists, I think they're probably one of the closest professions to an entrepreneur that is working a 9 to 5 job, right? I mean, think
I
about
like
the
that.
nature
Yeah.
of our work. We like get data. We have this problem that we're trying to solve. It's pretty open ended how we approach solving that problem. We have to use our best judgment, analysis, feedback from customers, whoever it is, and then at the end of the day, we usually produce a product, right? If
Yeah.
we like look at it from 10,000 feet, that is the entrepreneurial process. We're getting feedback from customers, we're producing something, and there's end users, and hopefully we're creating value. So I would say that, like, although you are working a 9 to 5 job, in a lot of ways, most data analysts and data scientists, they're creating skills that could be pivoted to entrepreneurship if they do have the appetite for the risk and they wanted to go that direction, which to me is like a really exciting thing. That's one of the reasons why I love the domain so much, is because
Yeah.
I got the
Yeah. It's a
taste of
very
both
interesting way to
things,
put it, man.
right?
Yeah. 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 I love it, man. Because you have to stay curious. You basically just have a whole bunch of data, and you have to come up with a product, which is basically an insight, which is valuable, which is basically the same thing an entrepreneur does. Analyzes the environment, transforms it into a product, and yeah.
Maybe I have a really bad sample, but a lot of the people who I've had on the podcast, they're very enterprising and entrepreneurial. And obviously, a lot of them are technical, or they're from data engineering, machine learning, whatever it might be. And to me, that raises the question: is it like a philosophy and a mindset, or is it a skill set? And I generally think that people who work in data, they might have more of a philosophy that's similar to how we view entrepreneurship than the average person, just because the nature of the work, it lines up with that way of thinking quite well. And so, that to me is really exciting. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying that every data scientist should become an entrepreneur, every data analyst should become an entrepreneur. But I've just been fascinated with how much more similar those domains are than a lot of people generally give them credit for.
Yeah, definitely. Never put it that way. Plus, just the ordinary fact that, yeah, whatever business you start, if you utilize data the right way, it will give you such an advantage over other companies that don't do that.
Oh, 100%. I was just
Yeah.
talking to um, a couple friends, and they're using data in a different space, in like a different way to view, like, comedy, for example. Right? They're looking at comedy in a different way than is traditionally thought, like a traditionally old fashioned, or maybe even education. Right? You produce a course out there, um, and even online courses are relatively rudimentary in terms of how they use data to improve the product. It's like, where isn't it going to help you in the entrepreneurial venture?
Makes sense.
Speaking of maybe entrepreneurship and the freedom that it allots you, you know, you've done a lot of traveling recently, and I'm really interested in hearing how that came about. I would imagine, just from looking at your Instagram, from watching your YouTube, travel is a big part of your life. That's something that was a major, maybe, factor in your decision to to quit the traditional data analyst role. And I'm wondering how you capitalize on that. Like, what is the story behind all the travel you've been doing?
Yeah. It started way before I did anything with YouTube. I guess the traveling itself was always in me. I don't know. I just like traveling and exploring places, and I really enjoy that. But I guess it started when I bought my first Sony camera, which was a little bit more of a serious camera, and I had the idea, why not make a travel video when I go to Mexico with my girlfriend? And I brought the video camera, made some cool shots, and that was also the first time I did some. A friend of mine and had this like kind of coaching business. We helped other guys uh, make sense of what they wanted out of life, how to make the next steps out of a 9 to 5. And that was the first time I actually did some work from behind my laptop in a tropical place, like the typical digital nomad kind of lifestyle. And yeah, it was just like 2 days in a 2 week vacation we had in Mexico. But that's the first taste I got from like working, but also traveling. I brought the camera, so I was also kind of a content creator. And it was shortly after that Mexico trip that I said to my girlfriend, you know what? I'm teaching all these guys like what do they want out of life, and what's the like how to make a plan for what to get out of life. And I basically sat down with her and we decided like what do we want out of life? Because we always chatted around. Like on the one hand, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I just wanted to settle down, start a family, so I could focus on building a business, something around creativeness, maybe YouTube. I thought about a lot of stuff, but like the main point there was like settling down. But completely on the other side was like traveling, adventure, going with the flow, and those things didn't match. I couldn't do like it's difficult to start a family while traveling the world and building a business while you're in a new place every month. So we decided, you know what? Let's set a date. First, we go traveling for a full year, just like do everything we want. For her, for my girlfriend, it's a sabbatical. She just finished studying, and for me, it was like just a year of a mini retirement, as Tim Ferriss calls it. And once we come back, we'll settle down and do the whole building a business thing. And in the meantime, I thought, I have this camera. I made this travel video. It's something I like to do. You know what? I'm going to make some more YouTube videos. The pandemic hit, so I had a lot of time on my hands. Started making more videos, started thinking about my YouTube channel, started growing my skills related to filmmaking and YouTube. And the ball started rolling. Like I started monetizing my channel, and I slowly started thinking, you know what? Instead of just chilling and traveling that year and thinking about what I want out of life, you know what? I'm just going to bring a camera, maybe a better camera, maybe invest in some better gear, and like double down on YouTube, see if that's something. Yeah, if I can make something out of it, if I can sustain myself purely based on YouTube and the whole personal brand around it. And the year before we started traveling, that's really when I started growing my channel. Like I had a couple of thousand subscribers. It's not much looking back, but I realized like, yeah, if I put in the work, this is definitely something that's possible. So that's exactly what I did. I invested a lot of money in myself, in courses, in camera, in a laptop, and some lighting. Went traveling, and that's basically how I would summarize this year. We're traveling the world, staying in one place for a month, focusing on YouTube. The other half of the time, we're just doing cool things wherever we are. And yeah, and I grew my channel from, I think at the start of this journey, it was like before we started, it was like 5,000 subscribers. No, 15,000 subscribers. Now I have over 100,000. It's slowly starting to become a reality that, yeah, if you put in the time and effort into this could definitely become a full-time thing. So that's
That's
where we are
amazing.
right now.
I want to call back to sort of the beginning of that story, because there's something that I found particularly meaningful in what you described. So you were talking about planning your life and looking at the conflicts in your values. That's
Mm-hmm.
something that was one of the most meaningful exercises I ever did. There's this book, I think it's like Awaken the Giant Within by Tony
Tony Robbins.
Robbins. And he has you do this exercise where you write down, I think it's like the 7 most valuable things, like your biggest values. So a value might be family, a value might be freedom, a value might be personal growth. And the thing you look for is conflicts. So like inherently, family and freedom are a little bit conflicting, right? A
Yeah,
family requires you to be close, same time and effort, and freedom requires the opposite of that. You can't have
yeah,
strings attached or any of those types of things. And the fact that you were able to work through that and figure out how to navigate that, the sort of conflict in your life, to me is a really powerful thing that literally anyone can do right now. Is think about, what values do I have, and because you untangled that a little bit, you were able to create a very clear action plan about what to do next. I think so
yeah,
many people, including myself, we fall into this trap where it's like, I don't know what to do because we have this competing narrative within the themes of our lives, and we simply stand still because we don't take action, we don't reprioritize, we don't um, introspect and sort through
yeah,
that. And I think that that's so beautiful that like that conversation with yourself and with your, I think, fiance now,
yeah.
what kicked off this whole cascade of really important and awesome life experiences.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny how just sitting down and thinking about certain stuff, or even writing it down, even if it's just half an hour or 1 hour, can give you so much clarity.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think I personally struggle with this, is that I know if I want to learn something, I have to do it hands on, right?
Hmm.
And I think in the nature of coding and the nature of learning things, hands on is a really valuable approach. It's probably the best way to pick up a new skill, whatever it might be. But hands on directly conflicts with sitting down and introspecting, which I think is also a
Yeah,
very important and necessary aspect of life and decision making. And so I'm always at odds with myself, whether it's like trying to find time to meditate, trying to find a time for stillness and silence, because my nature, which is to learn things and to try to do things effectively and quickly, is to go the opposite direction. Is that just me, or is that something that you also have a conflict with in your life?
ah, definitely. But I think that's also something I realized this year while traveling and thinking about stuff a lot. It's cyclical. You have to understand that it's all in balance. Like you have a period of introspection, and you have a period of not thinking and just going doing. And once you realize that that's like the most powerful thing you can do, uh, yeah, then that's just what you do. Yeah, like it costs a lot of energy if you just focus on output, just doing, just doing, just doing. Maybe you'll not burn yourself out, but your output will not be as productive or effective as it would be if you would also have a time of taking a break, introspection, whatever you want to call it, and then coming back to it like 10 times stronger and yeah, more productive. So it's, yeah, the balance. It's
It
part of it.
seems like what you're describing is that without the introspection, you lose direction. Like you can be pushing
I love
towards
that.
something,
Did you
but
come up with that one yourself, or
just right now, I figured you're the
oh,
one
that
that was
one?
saying it. I just put it into different words.
Good quote.
But th- there's the direction is what makes the hard work efficient. You can work
Exactly.
really hard and you can be dedicated to something and put in hours, but without knowing where you're going, you're just digging a hole for no reason. And I think that that's
Exactly.
you know that's actually very meaningful to me. As we talk through it, I learn new things, which is very exciting. So,
That's good.
so I really enjoy that high level concept that we sort of built right there. Um, I am interested at just like a more personal interest level. Like, where did you go and what were some of your like the highlights? Like, what were some of the coolest places you went to?
Cool. So yeah, maybe high over. We literally did a trip around the world. So we started in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Sydney, Australia. Then through Hawaii, your home place. But I didn't know it was your home place back then. Uh, we continued to LA, did a little road trip. So we visited San Francisco, Las Vegas, and now we're in Colombia, Medellin, going back to USA for 1 or 2 weeks, and then we're headed back to Holland. So that's like high over the trip around the world. But the highlights, man, oh, it's like coming back home and someone asks you, how was it? I was away for a full year. Where do you want me to begin? But I guess, of course, there were a couple of highlights. Burning Man, which that was a crazy experience. It was, I think,
I'm gonna try to go
I don't
next
know.
year. So if you have any
Have you ever been?
recommendations, I'll get them off. No, I've never been. I have a couple friends that go quite a bit, but
Yeah,
I've never uh, I've
it's such
never
an amazing
indulged.
experience. It's like you're just in a completely different world universe for a whole year, for a whole week. Uh, yeah, man, I could just talk 2 hours about Burning Man itself, but yeah, you just have to experience it. It's so crazy to explain in normal words, but it's definitely worth it. What else? I mean, yeah, we did mushrooms in Bali and on this little small tropical island where there's like no cars, just bicycles, and like everyone is doing mushrooms and smoking weed. And we visited for 2 days and thought, "Yeah, why not? Let's do it." And it was
Yeah,
amazing. They told us like, yeah, just a little bit, just makes you smile a little bit. And crazy experience, but it was awesome. Medellin is in itself is a crazy experience because Colombia wasn't on our planning at all. We wanted to. What was the original planning? I can't even remember. Oh yeah, Cape Town. Cape Town. We were supposed to be in Cape Town for the last couple of months, but eventually decided, you know what? Let's try Latin America. Let's try Colombia, and ended up staying for 2 months in Medellin, which is a lovely place. It's full of digital nomads, great food, cheap. Love it. Like Medellin as a city, an awesome experience. We just went to a football match yesterday, a Colombian Latin American football match. It was so awesome. Like the atmosphere, the passion they have for the football club. I had no idea who was playing, but I was just jumping and screaming, and it was awesome, man. Yeah, those were a couple of highlights, I guess.
yeah. I mean, it sounds like I'm always curious, right?
Mm,
What gives meaning to things, right? In a year, right? How do we determine what was the most meaningful event that happened in the year? Was it the most exciting? Was it the biggest breakthrough for a future career event? Was it the most enjoyable? Was it, what defines the excitement and what makes it
yeah,
stick out? And I think that, from what you described, the defining thing about the moments that were meaningful to you was the sense of adventure and understanding the or exploring the unknown. And to me,
mm,
that's a really valuable thing to be able to understand in yourself is like, what do I get meaning from? What do I get enjoyment from? That's something I've had to think about quite a bit myself is like, where does the meaning in life come from? Is it, me talking to a camera, or is that like a microcosm of something else? I mean, to me, as you would imagine, I have a podcast. I talk to people all the time. Understanding and learning about people, hearing their stories, hearing what makes them tick, that's one of the most meaningful things to me, right? If
yeah,
you ask me
definitely.
like, hey Ken, what were some of the coolest things you did this year? It'd be like, oh, I talked to this person and I learned this about myself. I learned this about them. And then, we're actually going to be doing something later this year because we hit it off so well. And like, you know, I love the idea that what what drives meaning for people, different people is different, but there's always these common themes, right? It's never like, oh, I watched this Instagram reel and that's what I think about, right?
No,
It's
no.
hopefully things that are a lot broader than that. And I really like I I I encourage everyone, think about what was meaningful to you in this year, last year, in your life even. And it makes, just puts everything into perspective. Like I ask myself quite a bit, is this activity that I'm doing right now, am I going to remember it? Like what impact
Yeah,
is it going to have in my life in the broader scheme of things? And I'd imagine a lot of those things that you described, they're going to have an impact on you in the long term, right? You're going to think about them. You're going to, you know, go there when you're not, like in your head when you're not feeling great, or you're going to gain inspiration from them in some way, or they change your perspective in some way. Um, and I don't know. I just like, I get really sad for other people when they're so influenced by maybe in the scheme of things, the less important things that we do. They're so consumed by
Yeah.
opinions of others or those types of things. And it's very freeing to hear you talk about like actual meaningful things that you did rather than, um, how many likes XYZ post or something got.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes back to the introspection thing. If you never think about what really is fulfilling to me, think about what moments made me genuinely happy, it's you can fall in this trap of like, oh, I watch all these advertisements that tell me that if I drive a cool car, then that's really cool and awesome. And then you buy this car and you're like, okay, this is nice, I guess. But are you like genuinely happy? Is that genuinely fulfilling? And it's funny. Yeah, it sounds so stupid, but if you never take the time to actually think about what makes you happy, you might end up doing some stuff that almost looks like it's fulfilling, but it's actually not that fulfilling for you. Yeah.
Well, so I would imagine you learned about what does a little bit about what does make you happy on this trip. I'm interested in what are some of the other like biggest takeaways that you had? What were the biggest things maybe you learned about yourself or just learned about life in general?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so the previous question was like, what were the highlights? So they were most fun and cool experiences. But I guess the most valuable stuff was actually in my lowest points during the travels. Like for example, the beginning. I had such high expectations of myself at the beginning of a trip. I thought I was gonna produce X amount of videos per week, and like I had this whole routine set up in my mind. And then like the first 2 weeks, I was just completely lost, and I wasn't able to produce as much videos as I wanted to, and I was struggling with like I would just pull all nighters because I had to push out those videos, and then I was tired and I didn't want to go out with my girlfriend and do stuff. But we're traveling, so I have to enjoy the traveling. So much pressure on myself. So I realized like I guess that the first lesson there was like you can plan all you want, but eventually you have to find some kind of middle ground where you're not lying to yourself, and you find the perfect balance between enjoying the process, enjoying the travels, whatever, and doing whatever you plan on doing. Uh, yeah, and it's about finding that balance. And I guess in general, the whole journey, I would describe the lesson as like finding the balance between structuring things out, planning things out, and just letting go. Funny enough, I mentioned the mushroom trip. That was also like one of the big lessons that I had there. It's like learn to let go on strategic times, and it was a very important lesson I learned there. So that was a big one, and it definitely helped me. I mean, I eventually grew my channel, yeah, basically more than I expected, while I did 3 times as less as I expected to do in terms of amount of videos. So yeah, it shows that I found the right balance. And I guess another one, and this is not necessarily travel related, but there was a period, I think we were in Malaysia, and I was also reading a book at the time called Why We Sleep by Matt Walker,
Great
or
book.
Matthew Walker. Yeah, yeah, I loved it. And it was a really eye-opening book on the importance of sleep. But coincidentally, and I don't know if it's caused by this book, but that month I've never ever slept so bad in my life. It was a mix of things. Like it was really noisy in the building. We couldn't find a really good routine. I was reading the book, so maybe it sparked some kind of anxiety for sleeping, or I don't know. But that's where I realized like how important sleep and routine and structure is in your life. No matter if you're traveling or sitting at home, if you don't have this routine, it's gonna kill your mood. It's gonna and since you're in a bad mood the whole day, it's gonna lower the quality of your life. You're not gonna be the enthusiastic and positive person you can be towards your girlfriend and friends and whatever. So it really lowers the quality of your life. You're going to be less productive. You're going to be less happy in general, all because of just a couple of routine things in your life, like sleep. So that's where I realized, like, yeah, no matter where we travel, no matter if we come back home, always need to have some form of structure to at least have a baseline, like good sleep, working out, and doing work. If I can nail those 3 things, I'm happy. And all the other things like meditating, journaling, cold showers, whatever, all cool as a bonus to make it even more special and more productive and whatever. But I learned there's a couple of key things I always need to put in the time and energy to have those set in place. That was a big one. Uh,
No, I
yeah,
so it's so fascinating to me because I feel the same way about structure, but sometimes I go to the other end of the spectrum where it's like, oh, my morning routine, I have to nail it. And then I'm like, oh, I should do an ice bath in the morning. Oh, I should meditate in the morning too. Oh, I should do this in the morning. I should journal. I should do all these things. And then if I do my whole morning routine, it's like 10 o'clock already. And I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
I
yeah.
could have
You haven't
spent.
done any
And,
work.
and so I think that that's, to me, that's like such a, just like you were talking about getting the balance, the work and the enjoyment right. I think getting the balance of your routine right is really important too. Like, what are the essential
Yeah,
things? Like, what exactly do you need to be as functional as possible? And don't be too rigid with yourself, because um, that's a slippery slope on either side. I feel like
yeah,
a big, outside looking in, a big lesson you learned on this trip is sort of that idea of moderation, right? And
yeah.
being able to find that balance. We
Exactly.
described, I personally don't think that there is such thing as balance in life. Like it at any one point in time, everything in your life is not going to be balanced, like in the short term. But
Yeah,
over
exactly.
time, you find balance between these things. Like I have to work really hard for 1 week, but over a month, do I really work that hard? Not that much. So
Really
to
good
me,
point.
that's such a cool concept. And I also I chuckle because you know the pressure that you put on yourself that you were describing, it's all self-imposed, right? I was making 3 videos a week at one point in time, and I was like, my audience needs this, like they want to see this, whatever it is. And then I ran a poll, and like nobody cared that I was making 3 videos a week, right? They
Yeah,
care that the content is good. They don't necessarily care if I'm super consistent. They don't necessarily care if um, I'm like killing myself every week to put these things out. They care about, hey, when he posts a video, it's interesting and I watch it. And
exactly.
that's, I guess, one way that I've used data to actually to improve my mental health in some sense, rather than the other way around.
Yeah, key.
Offline, we talked a little bit about how data analytics, in some sense, it always comes back to you, right? Even when you're not working in data analytics, it still has an influence in your life. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, you take YouTube as an example. I I hear a lot of people like always saying like, you know what, just create the best video possible. That's what YouTube is about. Let all those analytics and dashboards don't look at that. But I'm the data analyst, so I always look at the analytics and try to figure out stuff. And to be fair, sometimes it doesn't pay out. Like you can do all the analyzing you want and like think, okay, this video based on all the data is going to be an absolute banger, and then it's not. It feels flops completely, or yeah, performs differently than expected. But on the other hand, sometimes like I like to analyze like I don't want to get too technical for the non-YouTubers here, but there's like two metrics that are very important for your YouTube video: click-through rate, basically the percentage of people that click on your thumbnail and title, and the retention rate, basically how much of your video gets watched by a person. And now I like to analyze like, okay, which videos have a very high retention, meaning they're interesting because people watch the whole video, but a very low click-through rate. So not a lot of people click on a video, but the people that do watch almost the whole video. So that means maybe the video is really good, like you have a hidden gem here, but the packaging, the title and the thumbnail is just really bad. So I try to change the thumbnail and the title, and boom, and suddenly I see the video like growing in amount of views, and so yeah, that's a typical example of where I would apply analytics to find out what's happening in my yeah YouTube analytics. What else? I guess more in general, it's not necessarily data analysis, but like when I buy a new TV or when I buy airplane tickets or whenever whatever I need to do where I need to compare stuff, like buying airplane tickets takes me a week, a full time like comparing tickets and layovers, and okay, maybe then we can stay at this hotel, but they cost this much, but then we get the experience, and so yeah, it's I guess the analytical OCD kind of side that comes with data analysis. But just yeah, in general, just staying curious, comparing stuff, staying analytical, asking, should I buy this? Why should I buy this? This one is cheaper. Why is it cheaper? Yeah, yeah, those two things I would definitely mention.
Oh, I think the inquisitive nature is something that is one of the most important parts about this, about working in the data domain. And I would hope that that never leaves anyone. You know, that's a really valuable skill. Maybe annoying to at least my girlfriend,
Sometimes.
uh, but at the same time, it's a pretty powerful thing to help you understand life, how to understand it, how to get better and learn more, and take yourself to the next level. Um, you know, we touched on it a little bit, but I want to dive a little bit more into your YouTube journey and what you're hoping to achieve in the long run. I mean, you've alluded to saying, hey, you're doing this more full time now. It's continuing to grow. Where do you hope that goes? Um, and you know, what is your vision for the channel, the platform, and yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, good and hard question that I question myself all the time. Like this was the year where I really got to think about that, and I still haven't completely formed it. But like what I can share with you is, I want to keep creating videos because that's definitely what I enjoy doing. For now, just doubling down on YouTube because I think the journey is just getting started. So I think there's a lot of more room to grow in my YouTube videos, to improve, to grow my audience. And eventually, I might want to, in terms of like my creative outlet, I want to pivot into more, I don't know, call it mini documentaries, more long form kind of YouTube, high production kind of videos. I even have some people that I'm probably going to work with next year and the year after on some like actual documentaries as a camera guy slash executive producer. So like that's basically the creative side of me, just passion projects. And on the other side, you're also building an audience. You're building this personal brand, which is so strange. Like when you start YouTube, it's more of like I'm making cool videos and I get paid for it. But then you realize like there's people actually actually impacting people's lives. There's actually people sending me a message like, "Oh man, you opened my eyes and inspired me to start my own business or whatever." And then you realize like there's so much like you have such a big impact, and if you have such valuable impact, there's a ton of ways to build a business around it, whether it's something as obvious as coaching or making a course. But maybe, yeah, maybe I decide to write a book, which is also a creative outlet. Maybe things I'm thinking about and playing with in my mind is like maybe build a kind of creator hub. So basically, view it as an Airbnb or collection of Airbnbs where creators could chill in digital nomad kind of cities like Medellin, for example, or Bali. Chill, make content create together, connect. Uh, it's also a form of investing in real estate, which I always have in mind as well. So these are more the long form, far away kind of goals that I strive for. But yeah, to come back to your question, for now, it's like just as long as I can grow my personal brand and have a creative outlet, this is exactly what I want to do. And I would, there's nothing else I would rather do right now. This is exactly how I imagined this year. And I'm just going to keep continuing this. And that's also something I realized as I grew my channel, as you're more, as you're working more towards your purpose and you're on the right path, things come to you naturally. So in the beginning, it's like really looking, what is it, what I want to do in my life? Really that introspective thing we talked about. But once you're on that path, a lot of stuff comes your way naturally. You start to attract opportunities. You start to attract, yeah, you start to attract opportunities. That's basically what I want to say.
I love that.
So
That's sorry. Go ahead.
no, yeah. So keep doing this, and we'll see whatever comes my way.
I love that idea of attracting opportunities. It's called, well, I've called it historically like manufactured serendipity, right? The
Mm,
more things that you produce that are in line with what you want, the more likely it is that someone who could help you achieve that goal, or who'd be interested in being a part of that, or who would just be interested in consuming that in general, the more likely
yeah,
any of those people see it. And that means that the opportunities that you want start coming to you rather than you going out and getting them. And we all, I believe,
exactly.
have this sort of critical mass. So we, we produce a certain amount of content, and at that certain amount of content, maybe we still have to reach out to other people because they're bigger than us. You know, they have more of an influence, and we're being pulled towards them with like gravitational force. But once we reach a certain mass, it works the opposite direction. People are pulled towards us because they've seen our content, they've seen our stuff. That we start creating that like flip in momentum,
Yeah.
and that's been one of the most beautiful and interesting things to see. Is that rather than me going out and needing to advocate for the opportunities that I want, the opportunities that I want have started to come to me, and there have been so many more opportunities that I wouldn't have even conceptualized that are
Yeah.
available to me now, right? Like your search when you're going out and looking for something, it's very linear, right? There, you don't know what you don't know in the great unknown. When things come to you, there's so many things outside of your even conception that are possible. And to me, that is, I wouldn't, you know, I don't necessarily know if that's like a life hack or what it is, but it's something that I think is inherently beautiful is that, you know, you get access to more than you could ever ask for if you're doing the right things, taking the right steps, and putting yourself out there in the opportunities that you want.
Definitely. And I don't know if you've experienced this as well, but like it switches from yeah, really putting in the work and searching for opportunities to yeah, now you have to say no. Like that's the biggest challenge, saying no to the opportunity so you can focus on the right opportunities. Like that's the next challenge. Like there's so much stuff to do. You know, the next challenge you're facing is like focusing your energy and effort into the right opportunities, which I'm kind
Yes,
of getting into right now.
yeah, and that is what I struggled with this year. I said yes to so many things that I felt like I was pulled very thin. And then
Yeah.
this upcoming year, my goal is to actually take a step back, is to go
Yeah.
to the fundamentals, reevaluate what I enjoy. You know, I think that there's a difference between myself and a lot of some of the other content creators that I work with. I mean, a lot of people, they want to have like a massively, like their goal is to, you know, be YouTubers essentially. And I think that that's
Yeah.
awesome, right? Like, you
Yeah.
know, just because you're a YouTuber in the short term doesn't mean you can't grow other businesses, other things like that in the long term. But I'm sort of realizing that my true goals aren't necessarily to be a YouTuber. It's to, you know, there's things that come along with being a well-known presence that I don't necessarily know if I'm prepared for or want in the longer
Yeah.
term. And so it's not that I still love making YouTube videos, I'm still producing things, but it's like, oh, how do I leverage YouTube and these types of things into other things that I enjoy? And you know, one of the main things that I absolutely love is podcasting. Just having these
Exactly.
one-on-one conversations with people. Like I would still do these if no one watched them. Right? It's just that
Exactly.
interesting to me. I don't know if as many guests would do them if no one watched them, but that's a completely different story. Um, but you know, to me, that there's like an individual understanding that we all strive for is that like I found that I love this type of longer form intimate content, whereas a lot of other people, they really enjoy the like more specific storytelling of a YouTube video or a documentary or whatever that might be. And it's obviously not that one is better than the other. It's that like different people have those affinities, and that's what makes individual content really good, is
Yeah.
that everyone views it a little bit differently. Everyone has those different value systems. And again, like over the whole conversation, it's been really thrilling for me to hear about how you've refined those and begun to understand those value systems and yourself better over the course of this trip.
Yeah, man.
Amazing. Those are really all the questions that I had. You know, this was awesome. It was like a very like perfectly concise interview. Is there any uh, advice that you have? Final words of advice? Any additional ways that people can get in contact with you or learn more, or any other projects do you want to let people know about that are in the pipeline? Those three things. I realize it was a lot.
Yeah, let's take a couple of minutes. No, I think we kind of like that was the brief thing we touched upon in the beginning. Just realize the importance of sitting down and thinking about what you want out of life, where you are in life, where you're headed to. Just doing this check with yourself, like what am I doing? Why am I doing the things I'm doing? What am I doing exactly? Where am I headed to? Where did I come from? And it's a difficult one. It's like it's easy to do. It's really simple to do. You just have to sit down with a pen and paper for 1 hour and write down your thoughts on a paper. But it's difficult to do because on the one hand, everyone is busy, work, sports, friends, family, TV shows, whatever. But on the other hand, it might also come off as, I don't know, cheesy is not the right word, but it's like, yeah, journaling or writing down things, and so that somehow magically my problems will be solved. But it worked for me, and it worked for a lot of people that I see that put in the same time and effort to just do that introspective check. Call it magic, whatever you want to call it. It has some kind of a positive impact. It can have some positive impact on your life, and I would definitely recommend everyone to at least try it to see if you're headed in the right way in life.
I would add that you should at least try it for like a month, because
Yeah,
you do anything for one day, let's say working out, you're going to feel sore the next day, but you're not going to see abs, right?
yeah, big one, big one.
So many people say they've tried it, but they haven't really committed to trying it. And I think that that's a massive differentiation. And I agree 100%. You get the dividends of journaling or meditating or any of these things after creating a habit of it, more so than just doing it. Um,
Yeah,
and, we talked about the importance of habits earlier as well.
yeah, good one. You like they say, 4 weeks to at least build a habit. Yeah, definitely. So that would be my final message. You would be surprised at where it can take you in life and where people can reach out. Stefanovic, which is basically a combination of my first name and last name, Stefan Masnikovic. Find me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Yeah, and that's it, I guess. And I just wanted to take a moment to really thank you for having me on your podcast and for basically taking an hour of your day to talk to me. Really appreciate it. Yeah,
Hey, of course, thank you. You're the star of the show here. This is awesome. I'm so happy we were able to do this, and I really love your story, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you and being able to share this with everyone on who follows the platform.
thanks, Ken.